tracks gleam beneath the waves like silver reeds, a lattice of rails laid during the Great Flood, when the old continents drowned and the new seas rose to swallow certainty. On those rails runs the Zephyr Line, a steam and salt-slicked train that never stops, its wheels drinking the tides, its pistons beating with an engine no scholar can explain. Some call it perpetual motion, others a miracle of rust and echoes. To us orphans who live in its iron belly, it is simply home. We ride the Zephyr around what is left of the world, listening for stories the way thirsty mouths listen for rain. My name is Lys, short for Lysandra, a name my father once whispered into my hair. I remember little else of him, or of my mother. When the high waters broke our town, I washed against a barnacle-studded platform where the Zephyr paused only long enough to take in 3 waterlogged children and a crate of sparking wires. I was the smallest, barely 7, but I carried a voice loud enough to barter. I told the conductor how the flood had sounded like a lion's throat roaring open, how neighbors prayed inside overturned boats, and how a gold heirloom earring spun in the current like a doomed planet. The conductor stamped my words on a thin brass strip, slid it into the ticket vault, and gestured me aboard. That was 8 years ago. I am 15 now, and my ticket book is a fat accordion of other people's memories. The conductor stands 7 feet tall in boots lacquered with molten tar. We orphans address him by title alone, though some suspect he was once an archivist from the drowned libraries of Alexandria Renewal. His coat is stitched with pockets the size of Bibles, and inside each glints an earpiece to catch unraveling tales. He never sleeps. Instead, he prowls the corridor with a lantern powered by hush moths, their wings quivering like unread sentences. To travel the Zephyr, one must pay with a story. Coins corrode, jewels scatter, but stories ride. The conductor tests every tale on his tongue. If it rings untrue, the teller is escorted to the caboose and left at the next water station. But a story that beats with real blood buys you residence until another port of call pries new words from you. The train itself is a serpent of mismatched carriages, each hijacked from an era that sank. A Victorian dining car welded to a bullet-nosed Shinkansen sleeper. A glass observation deck pillaged from an Art Nouveau Zeppelin. A rust-red livestock wagon patched into a hydroponic garden. Salt crusts the couplings. Jellyfish drift below the windows, glowing like drifting street lamps. Above, petrels nest on the signal masts that pierce the cloud line. When the train whistles, it is a cathedral organ mourning for air. We orphans serve as the Zephyr's ears. At each half-drowned station, we disembark in pairs, nets of questions slung over our shoulders. We wade through marketplaces on stilts, climb steeples whose clocks have drowned at noon, barter for stories with sea glass, dried kelp, sometimes a kiss of sweet water if we have any left. Then we hurry back before moonrise. On slow nights, the rails knock a lullaby under our cots, and I dream of cities that still breathe above the waves. An older boy named Malachi once tried to count every circuit the Zephyr made around the globe. He carved notches into a beam near the engine, but the beam splinters with heat, and the notches blur. Still, we reckon a full loop takes roughly half a year, though time skews on water. Seasons blend. Monsoon sours into blizzard, thunder into the hush of polar hush fields. We know latitude not by temperature, but by the accents and collected stories, the way northern voices braid syllables into ropes, while equatorial tongues pour like honey. The ticket vault occupies an entire carriage, a cathedral of drawers. Each brass strip bears an etched summary, a widow who became a reef, a tyrant swallowed by his own flag, a girl who married the moon. When the vault fills, The conductor seals a drawer, stamps a sigil, and a bell tolls somewhere deep in the engine. We orphans wait outside, silent as lifeboats, while he files the fresh intake. Some nights, the conductor invites a select few inside to hear a story recited by the vault itself. The drawers slide, gears chime, and voices long dead breathe through mechanical throats. I have heard only one such recital, the tale of a deaf cartographer who mapped wind with colored threads. It left me tasting the color blue for days. Not all passengers are drifters or peddlers of third-hand myths. Some arrive intent to ride briefly, pay with a single anecdote, and depart at the next port. Others come chasing the rumor that the Zephyr's perpetual engine hides a lever to rewind fortunes. A few bring knives, trying to strong-arm the conductor for access to the vault. They underestimate the orphans. We defend the stories because they defend us. Without them, we possess nothing but rust. We fight with sling hooks, shark-bone daggers, and the terror of children who have survived floods. Afterward, we pass the attackers' bodies to the sea and collect the tale of their foolishness, the only ticket they ever purchase. Last equinox, we coasted through the Diamante Strait, where the rails skim a forest of sunken crystal spires. There we found Izumi, a silent girl balanced on a drifting door, hugging a metal case. Her eyes were lunar gray, her lips cracked like droughted earth. Malachi and I hauled her aboard. The conductor inspected her bundle, a waterproof recorder whose battery blinked its last. "Your story?" he asked. Izumi pressed play. Out seeped a lullaby in the voice of a mother, hoping the storm would pass. 1 minute of song for one life's passage. The conductor honored it and stamped her ticket. Izumi has not spoken since. She sits in the observation deck, knitting drowned notes into string. I wonder what language her silence writes. Each of us orphans is required to collect one grand story every circuit, something rare enough to be archived in silver plate instead of brass. Fail, and you forfeit your berth. Success, and you keep your cot another year. My last grand story, The Whispering Orchard, came from the high canopies of Bolivia Azul, where trees bear fruit that whispers the secrets of whoever eats it. I lost 2 fingernails climbing those slick trunks, but the story of a thief who ate all the fruit and forgot his own name earned me a silver ticket. Yet the conductor eyed me afterward, as if expecting more. I understood. Survival is not enough. The engine demands wonder. So when rumors reached us of the Mauve hurricane, I volunteered. Somewhere near the fractured Caribbean, survivors claimed, an eternal pink storm brimmed with voices, circling a solitary citadel of dry land. The story, if real, would be an epic. Izumi insisted on coming, though she still spoke only with her knitting needles. Malachi begged off, claiming the last expedition cost him 3 toes' worth of frostbite. The conductor blessed our departure at Port New Orpheus, a leaning pier of coral and scavenged iron. He gave us a single compass whose needle pointed not north, but toward narrative density, whatever that means, and reminded us that if we perished, at least our vanishing would become a tale for others. The Mauve hurricane found us first. A wall of rose-tinged clouds rolled across the sea, like a bruised veil, lightning pulsing cursive through its folds. We rowed a skiff along submerged telephone lines until the wind swallowed our oars. The eye enclosed us in hush. Inside, at the hurricane's heart, towered a lighthouse of marble torn from a vanished coast. Its beacon pulsed faint violet. We moored the skiff to a balcony riddled with salt cracks and climbed inside. The lighthouse keeper greeted us in the foyer, a boy no older than 14, dressed in a rag of a uniform. He introduced himself as Damon, the last scion of Beacon House Academy, a school once perched above cliffs now melted into waves. The hurricane, he said, had circled him for years, guarding the memory of land. Each night the storm's voices told him fragments of the world's forgotten maps. He wrote them in seawater ink that vanished at dawn, so he began tattooing them along his arms, ribs, and throat. He rolled up his sleeves to reveal spirals of names, lost harbors, eroded borders, pathways between islands that no longer exist. His body was a living atlas of what the sea had devoured. I recorded his tale while Izumi navigated the lighthouse stairwell, gathering echoes in little glass vials. Damon asked to ride the Zephyr, to trade his hurricane for our rails. "I'm tired of being the center of a storm," he confessed. "I want to be a passenger in someone else's weather." The deal was struck. We offered him passage. He offered his atlas skin. Yet leaving the lighthouse meant crossing the storm again. Izumi, motionless all this while, pressed her palm to one of Damon's tattoos, a route between two cities, drowned before we were born. She whispered then, her first spoken word since boarding the Zephyr. "Home." We timed our exit. At dawn, the hurricane slackened into mauve mist. Damon carried only a knapsack of empty parchment. He said he would write new land as he found it. The three of us slogged across shallows where lamp posts poked like rusted reeds. The Zephyr shrieked in the distance, announcing its approach to a junction south of the storm. We reached the rails as the engine's lanterns sliced the fog. The conductor stood on the forward platform, coat billowing, smell of ozone stitched to his cuffs. I presented Damon's atlas skin. The conductor inspected the tattoos, tracing inked estuaries as though confirming coordinates whispered by ancestors. He nodded once. Silver ticket. Then he turned to Izumi, who cradled her vials of hurricane echo. She uncorked one. From its mouth spilled a chorus of voices, chanting a nursery rhyme about islands that drift like rafts. The conductor's eyes softened. "Gold ticket," he declared. "Rarer than silver, issued perhaps once in a decade." Izumi bowed, tears shining on the rims of her silence. We returned to our berths as the Zephyr lunged forward. Damon pressed his forehead to the window, watching the lighthouse recede into storm. He asked what work we orphans performed aboard. I told him. We scrub corrosion, mend ballast balloons, feed the quantum furnace with paradox tales, lull the engine with lullabies because it dislikes silence. Silence tastes like stalling, the conductor once warned us. Damon laughed, a bright sound unused to itself. He volunteered for night watch, said reading storms had made him sleepless anyway. Weeks passed. The Zephyr climbed a gradient where rails rose into the low stratosphere to bypass an oil-slick archipelago. Ice formed on the windows, flying fish iced mid-leap, shattering against couplings like crystal confetti. During this time, Damon and I compared memories. My life before the flood was a sonnet broken mid-line. His had been a chapter pulled from a burning book. We found kinship in absence. When I asked if the hurricane might pursue him, he shrugged. Storms chase stories, not people. I gave it mine. It is sated. Yet one dusk, the lookout bell tolled a warning. Squall inbound, unnatural trajectory. Out the panoramic glass, we saw mauve cumulonimbus bulging over the horizon. Damon clenched. It's come for me. The conductor convened us in the dining car-turned war room. Options: accelerate and outrun, decelerate and let it pass, or offer the storm fresh stories to distract it. The engine could not withstand full throttle at this altitude. Deceleration would strand us on brittle ice. Only the third choice remained. We emptied the vault of minor tales, brass strips containing jokes, heartbreaks, mediocre epiphanies, and fed them into the engine's speaker funnel. The train broadcast a cacophony of lives, farmers singing to drowned corn, Soldiers apologizing to enemy waves, poets reciting haiku to barnacles. The storm hesitated, swirling violet prairies overhead. But hunger returned. Lightning cracked across the nose of the train, peeling paint like petals. Izumi stepped forward, vials in her arms like screaming infants. "Take me," she mouthed, though no sound emerged. Damon gripped her wrist. "No. It's me it wants. I'm unfinished cartography." He stripped his shirt, exposing the atlas ink. "Let me give it a final continent." I refused both sacrifices. A thought blossomed. What if the storm needed not a body, but a storyteller? I stood atop the observation deck, wine flaying tears from my eyes, and began to speak. Not the discreet tales we traded, but the entire chronicle of the Zephyr line. How after the Great Flood, engineers fused locomotive hearts with ship lungs. How the first passengers paid in lullabies. How every orphan aboard carried worlds in their mouths. I spoke of brass strips clinking like cicadas, of hush moths in the conductor's lantern, of jellyfish caravans glowing beneath wetted sleepers. The words tore my throat raw, yet the storm slowed, listening. Behind me, other orphans erupted in chorus. Malachi shouted about counting circuits. Izumi released her vials so the hurricane could hear itself echo. Damon recited a coastline drawn on his ribs. The conductor opened the vault's doors wide, letting drawers sing. Our collective story rose in spirals, stitched of iron, salt, and stubborn breath. The storm unfolded, layer by mauve layer, as though turning pages. Its thunder quieted to a murmur. When the last drawer fell silent, the hurricane exhaled. Rain of lilac petals, petals not water, pattered across the roof, dissolving on contact. Then the clouds unraveled like thread, vanishing into a sky reborn blue. The rails ahead glittered unbroken. We had not outrun the storm. We had narrated it into repose. I collapsed, voice stripped to whispers. The conductor lifted me, carrying me to the infirmary berth as gently as a parent might. "Your ticket," he said, "needs no medal." He pressed a leather badge into my palm, embossed with the infinity glyph reserved for guardians of the vault. "From this circuit on, you curate the stories." Weeks later, my voice mended enough to recite again. I took my new post within the vault. Damon serves as cartographer of future tracks, his ink freshened with roads the Zephyr might one day forge. Izumi became our acoustician, sampling silences between waves to seed the engine's hum. Malachi still counts circuits, though the beam finally snapped. He etches notches now on his forearm instead, flesh remembering what wood forgot. We orphans are older than our years, yet young enough to believe the rails will never rust. The Zephyr arches south toward archipelagos unnamed, its wheels singing chromium hymns. When newcomers board, drenched in fear and hope, the conductor ushers them to me. I listen. A girl tells of a leviathan curled beneath volcanoes. A man confesses he once married a ghost, and they still argue over dinner. I file each brass strip, and with every story added, the train grows lighter, as though narrative itself is buoyancy. Sometimes, alone in the vault's amber glow, I recall my father whispering my name. I try to taste the shape of his story. Perhaps he, too, rides rails somewhere, paying passage with memories of me. If the Zephyr circles the globe forever, maybe our tracks will cross, two perpetual motions intersecting for one heartbeat. Then I will trade all the tales I've gathered for his single sentence. I never stopped looking. Until that convergence, I keep the engine fed, the drawers singing, and the orphans dreaming. For this is what we have learned in our revolutions around the drowned world. Water cannot erase us as long as we remember each other aloud. The train must continue, And so must we, circling the planet like a punctuation mark that refuses to settle. And when the seas one day recede, leaving rails gleaming on dry land, the Zephyr will still run, gathering stories from the dust. We orphans, no longer lost, will lean from its windows and teach the newborn deserts how to bloom with voices.